Okay. Okay, I will call the different rapporteur and we will make very short conclusions. So let me see. We'll make it very, very mathematically. You know, we have Lawrence that will represent 1-1. So you will be, you want to sit here. You want to escape. So Lawrence, you will sit here, close to Xenia. Then we have Nicola. With Nicola? Where is Nicola? Okay. Just, well, sit somewhere. We don't mind. Tom, please take a seat. We have Giulio, who is here. We have then for 2-1, Xenia is here. 2-2, is Diogo here? Diogo is not here. So, well, you see, this is a matter of checking your resilience. Is Daniel Sampere here? Daniel should be somewhere because. Yeah, you've seen him, because he will be nominated immediately rapporteur. You know, this is to test his resilience capacity. Yeah, exactly. So you know, we say that the absent are always wrong. You know this sentence they say. Okay, we have then Nicolas Fevre is not here because colleagues from DG Research did not maybe understood that they should report. Maybe Tom is here. Daniel as well again, and we have then Paco. Paco is here. Okay, thank you, Paco. So, well, we should. Could someone, Bernardo? Could maybe? You are calling him. Okay. So we miss the one on forest fire because Nicola is not here. Who participated in forest fire? Everybody. You participated, Bernardo? Yeah. He's coming. Nobody participated. Well, Jordi. Well, okay. Well, but yeah, you have your own notes. Good, but in fact, the issue about this conclusion, it's also for getting a trace of what has been discussed. You know, it's very, very short. It can be 3 to 5 minutes. Conclusions that we'll use also to put on the website. So it's not a matter of opening the debate again, it's to inform the other audience, all the audience. So if you feel like, come, otherwise I don't force you. And it's because it's, I know by experience that it's a little bit stressful to just arrive as a, okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Jordi. So we will then start with the first one, which is, by Lawrence, and I will, yeah, you are opening the ball.
Thank you. Yes, good afternoon, morning. So a bit of an impromptu session, as our chair is not here, and I didn't realize I was doing this. So you will have to decide whether I'm actually just inventing it, making it up, or whether it's true from from the notes. So our session was called, oh, sorry, I can't remember what the session was called. It was implementing the Sendai framework, I think, actions in support of Sendai framework implementation. So, and it was chaired by Andrew Barra from the UN Sendai framework. And there were really, there were 4 of us speakers, and there was very much a common theme, and that was about how to align the outcomes and the objectives of the Sendai framework to operational implementation. And we picked on, three of us picked on subjects which range from risk. Magda spoke about risk and the requirements for a horizontal generic understanding of risk as opposed to a silo-driven, very specific sectorial perspective of risk, and the commonalities and the similarities of risk, and how those could be used to harmonize and provide better collaboration and integration in support of the Sendai framework. I think that's broadly correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. And then there was Rory Donnelly, who was a private sector association representing private sector companies who use Earth observation imagery. My company being one of them, CoU for Copernicus. And really how, again, although it was slightly off the agenda topic, Horst, you'll vouch for that, It was quite useful because those organisations, whether they're public, private, or indeed voluntary, who are using Earth observation imagery, are using it in a very technical and a very specific way. And again, I think what came out of that session was that there is a disconnect and a lack of joined-upness between the outcomes and the policy objectives of Sendai framework and how that is translated from what is required or what those objectives are down to the operational implementation. And again, that's a really key thing, and it's not the fault of either the individual projects or the users, specific users of Earth observation, or the H2020 projects, nor is it the fault of the UN in what they're doing with the Sendai framework, because it's a fantastic mechanism for driving sustainability and resilience and so on and so forth. But there is a missing connection at a intermediate level, and the translation between policy objectives and operational implementation. And then last but not least is my approach, which many of you will probably realize was again about not joining things up between policy and practice, about how that understanding, that shared collective understanding of risk, which Magda picked up on, a collective understanding of risk and a mechanism, governance mechanism, a governance framework that allowed different organizations from different perspectives to actually understand what that collective view of risk is, travel forward together towards a set of shared outcomes, not necessarily harmonizing what they do and how they do it, but understanding the differences and where those differences pose risk and threat and fail to then support shared objectives. And in this case, Sendai objectives. And again, if there was a better translation between this framework and the operational projects or the outcomes required at a more operational implementational level, there would be a better support for the Sendai framework at that operational level. So I think that's broadly it. Andrew has written a set of notes which I probably completely trashed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lawrence. Well, it was very comprehensive. Thank you. You have been heroic, in fact, in the reporting of some things that you did not really take note to. And Nicola is the second hero, because you are also representing the reporter who could not come today. So, Nicola, the floor is yours.
Let's say the team and we discuss is the interaction between climate change adaptation and disaster risk resilience. So, starting from the global goals defined by the climate change adaptation, Sendai framework, sustainable development goals, we know that we should reduce vulnerability and enhance resilience. This is the main point. From this point, we in the session, in the panel, we tried to see how regional, national, regional, and local initiative can support this theme. And the point, there are four main points. So the first one is that sometimes the local level have the access to too much knowledge, too much initiatives that are moving around these themes, but they need, let's say, a downscale to understand how this initiative can be really used in the region, in the municipalities, in the local communities, in order to be very effective. This is the first point, to be very, have sounding initiative to be used operationally. Then there is a big challenge in, let's say, related to the coherence between national policies, regional policies, local policies, of course, under the umbrella of European and UN perspective. But let's say this is another point that sometimes puzzle a bit the local authorities, because they don't know if they are moving in the right direction. Maybe sometimes the national level is moving and promoting some policies that are not well perceived or used at the regional or local level. So more coherence between the policy. And the last point is the network. What is needed are networks at different level, but especially at local level to involve people and association communities of local stakeholders in going in the direction of increasing their resilience to risk. These are the main point discussed during our team.
Thank you very much, Nicolas. Well, we will continue with geohazards. Giulio will have a lot of things to say.
No, I promise you to be short, okay. Well, first of all, we had contribution of Stefano Salvi, Gerasimos Papadopoulos, and Christian Hilling. They spoke about, snapshot about geohazard, the supersite case, the importance of the collection and the sharing of the data at international level. That was Stefano. Papadopoulos spoke about early warning systems and importance of these against earthquakes and tsunami, while Hilling spoke about the importance of the contribution of practitioners networks and in geohazard context. Okay, those are important issues that were included in my introduction to the session that was as an umbrella of the results of the vision paper guideline of Espresso project that identify which are the gap and the needs for future possible framework. But what is the news? What is the message that I want to give you all? Was that in our session, apart of the 4 speakers, there were 3 persons. That means that the geohazard has been, in my view, is a warning. And I'm really worried about this, because this is a message that the geohazard has been completely neglected. Now there is a disgregation of the stakeholders, of the researcher, that don't pay any more attention to the European environment in terms of research, in terms of, aggregation of knowledge. Because in the last 7 years, in Horizon 2020, we have been all very focused on climate change. Climate change, climate change, climate change. That is important. It was at the beginning a pioneeristic issue to be stimulated. Fine. Now, after 7 years of climate change, I think that is important to come back a bit, even to other kind of hazard, geohazard like earthquakes. And earthquakes has an effect, as Stefano was saying yesterday, that takes decades to recover. Decades to recover. And an eruption, a real eruption, could take, if Vesuvius or Campi Flegrei or Santorini, could take even 1 generation. So that means that probably we need to take into account this, even in the view of multi-hazard approach. Now everybody speak about multi-hazard. Okay, we hadn't the tools to evaluate the impact of climate change on hydrological increasing of hazard and on the impact of people. Okay, fine. Now probably we have more and more capability to put together in one chain, in cascading effect, earthquakes, landslide, earthquakes, for instance, as a premonitory of an eruptions, as we did in Santorini, for interruption of power, electric power, and so on. So all these issues now need to get in again the geohazards, because we have been, in my view, too. So I'm sorry if I'm a bit provocative on that, but this is my feeling. This is my feeling, be a structural engineer and having follow since the framework 4 all the development of the effort that European Commission put in the research. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giulio. Well, you do your role perfectly, and as we discussed previously in the DRS topic, I'm completely in line with you. I think that the disasters have to be looked at not only in climate-related sphere, but also on geohazards. So it's quite very important for the Commission as well. I would like to give the floor then to Xenia, who would to deal with the community resilience topic. She will have to leave very soon because
well, I keep you on your feet here because I'm sitting on the other end. Good morning. I have been at the panel of disaster risk reduction and resilience on how to build community resilience. And I had the pleasure to be sitting here together with Anna-Marie Heikkilä from VTT, Finland, and Beatrice Gatto from a non-profit organization about research and training of care and social services located in Italy. And last but not least, Vasilios Latinos from IGLI, Local Governments and Sustainability. The way we did our panel was a bit unorthodox, if you will, but nevertheless, people enjoyed it. They told me afterwards. So what we did was we had a certain series of questions, and then all the three panelists were giving their answers, their opinion, and then the floor was coming up and also were giving their opinion. So we had a quite interactive session. The first question was, how can we involve community in disaster risk analysis? And the questions was like, the answers were, well, honesty and realistic risk analysis at all levels, public, private, municipality. And the social services, they have to be involved because when risk hits, it hits most everyone, but mostly the ones with disabilities. So those people, they have to be included in the risk analysis. Where they are, how can they be located, how do we communicate to them, how do they receive the news? So this is something which has to be included in the resilience strategy of the municipality. Of course, we have the personal data challenge, and that should be handled accordingly. Then the second question was, how can communities be better prepared to reduce vulnerability and causes of vulnerability? And we had a good discussion, but the key points are governance. Governance is missing. Governance must be understood, again, at all levels, from the operators to the mayor, to the municipality, to the policy people. So governance must be at city level in order for it to be operational. Trust is very important. How can the different operators trust their organizations since they are focusing on different things? Communication across all sectors. And we touched upon open science. What is open science? Open science, the Commission has been talking about open science for the past many years, since FP7. And open science is about opening up the results, but not just publishing them, like throwing them over the wall, but translating them so the operators, the different organizations can understand them. Then we talked about applicability. How do we apply these results? So they have to be translated and showcased in order to be better used. Question number 3 was, how can community members be involved in early warning initiatives/systems? And there we said, how can citizens be informed with what kind of media and how can they be involved in the information? So, and how do we take care about fake news, which is something that is polluting our society right now? So one suggestion was to use the young generations in the planning and in the execution, use the schools, use the students, use the young generation. Those are the ones that are going to bring the new ideas on the table and start being involved. So in other words, citizen science. like it or not, is here and is a tool which can be also used in this respect. And then involve citizens themselves to build themselves to be resilient themselves, so to have a safe network. And the last question was, what lessons learned and good practices are there to be widely used? So the suggestion was to build a pan-European resilient network to share results and federate the different operators across the borders. It seems to me that we hear the same messages over and over again. So I guess action should be taken, and perhaps a call is required for this. So with that, I close this session with responsible research and innovation is a tool, is a quality assurance system which can be used also in the projects of disaster risk reduction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Xenia. Well, we have now, well, in a way, another hero, because you will have to report something which you did not report, you know. So with the Diogo could not come, so you will have to lead the discussions on forecasting extreme events and the water-related threats. So you make it two sessions in one.
Two sessions in one. Okay. Yes, Diogo is Gusmão Sorensen is not here. I will try to summarize a little bit both sessions. The first one was the forecasting extreme events. One comment is that extreme, we prefer to understand that extreme, that means that high impact consequences, because extreme can be something that you don't see usually, but what is really important that there are high impact consequences that can be damages, of course, but also disruptions or problems with business continuity. So that means that it is more close that the name extreme. There is a number of projects around extreme. There are a number of things. I will just comment few issues that were commented. The first was we need to improve forecast of these extreme with high impact consequences events. And one keyword now in the next future will be artificial intelligence, that in the past was named in another way, but now is much more modern to say artificial intelligence. So this is something that is coming. All this knowledge and technology apply to make this forecast better. We have also the concept of we need to move from forecast of the situation itself to the forecast of the impacts. That means we need to forecast these disruptions, these problems for the business continuity, these problems or these damages created by the events. Not the event itself, but which are the consequences, because this is what make possible that the people, the first responders, can do decisions based on this impact forecast. And the third problem that was also commented was that we need the integration of all available information in one decision support system. There is information about required for the decision, that it is widespread in different containers, sometimes separated, and we need to put all together. There are 3 projects that are working together: Be Aware, iReact, and Anywhere, that try to make solutions for that. And one of the most important things is that all the information required for a better management of the event, of the extreme event, should be put together in the hands of the decision-making people. Finally, we have talked a lot of climate change. And climate change, we always think about temperature, because temperature was clearly linked to the climate change. We know from scientific point of view that the climate change essentially is a change on the temperatures. But we always said that it was not clear that this change will be also affecting the precipitation. The studies are not conclusive. But now we have seen that this increase of the temperature through the increase of the temperature of the sea, specifically in the Mediterranean, that it is a quite close sea, it's creating a triggering effect of the increase of the heavy precipitations. So the climate change, even if it is not proved scientifically that it is inducing a change in the precipitation trend, is changing the sea temperature, and this is changing the probability of heavy precipitation. We have seen this. And this is a new perception of the climate change for the extreme events that are coming with the rain. This for the first session, but it is very close to the water-related threats. And I go to my notes to try to make it a little bit exact. The first comment was that the name of the session was very provocative, water-related threats. So it was very open, not very clearly directed. But at the end, we have only interventions about floods. So part of the people were asking or interested in other things. For instance, how to use ecosystems, because ecosystems are related to water, and it's not directly to the floods, even if they can be a nature-based solution for the floods. There is much more things that are related to this kind of point. And we can even imagine other water threat that can be related to water, threats for the society through the vector of the water. But it was just to say that the title was provocative, and at the end we start working about floods, because floods is the main natural hazard in Europe, so it's normal we talk about floods. One of the things is that the perception that the climate change has changed the paradigm of floods. Up to now, the floods were occurring where the river was. Close to the river, you have a flood-prone area. But now with the climate change, the heavy precipitations are everywhere, can be everywhere, even in the Netherlands or in UK. And that means that the floods related to heavy precipitation that can be urban floods, because the increase of urbanization, very impervious areas, lot of water available very quick in time, or to the slopes, that means flash floods, can be almost everywhere in Europe. So we need a change of paradigm, because as some friend in the session told us, if you have a river, you are prepared, and you have boats, you have the tools. But if you have not a river and you have a flood, you are not prepared, essentially. So you need to change. We need to face this paradigm. That means that probably there was a presentation about the CSA project on the Danube. Probably we need to extend these CSAs to other subjects, not just for the rivers, because it's required an exchange of experience, the places in which they know this can happen, to tell the places in which for them is really a challenging new risk, what they do or the experience. So it was identified that it is a nice subject to think about these new floods. Also, it was mentioned about the directive. The directive, European Flood Directive, is too focused on rivers and should be like changed. And at this point of the discussions, we discovered that probably we need more interaction with the policy makers. And I know that Philippe is always doing this in the community of users. So essentially, community of users here where we are is a good place to start to try to make this policy connection that it's not always easy. On the same line, we have a discussion on the role of the insurance companies and the connection with the insurance company. And it was a very nice comment about one representative of DG DEFCO, about the real actor for these kind of things is not the insurance companies, but the ministries of finance or economy, because they are the only ones that have funding for the pre-disaster measures, for the pre-disaster funding, and would be nice to invite or make a connection with them. I don't know, for Philippe, it would be nice, but it's like a conclusion. These community of users should also try to involve these guys that have the money, and we will try to convince them to put forward the pre-disaster measurements. And Of course, resilience is there, resilience is everywhere, but we need to think about resilience in the local level, in the activity level. Is the activities that are risk that needs to be involved, the people that are at local level in the risk areas that should be involved. This is very difficult. I'm pretty sure that it is difficult that one of you came from a local community and major or something like that, or if there is someone, probably there is someone that it's very reduced number. They have no way to come to Brussels to express, but I think this is another point for the community of users. And finally, a comment about the wetlands, the ecosystems should be there. We are not facing things that can be done by structural measures, but we need to move to these soft kind of measures in which we involve the ecosystems, the nature-based solutions, but also the people, citizens that should be able to self-respond when there is a threat. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel. Well, we will now move to forest fire. Thank you, Jordi, to have taken over from Nicola, who could not be there today.
Thank you. This will be an improvisation, but because I cannot talk on behalf of my chair. But mainly in the forest fires panel, we stated that fire has been, the first thing to understand is that fire has been shaping our landscapes and our forests for centuries, and this must be understood and accepted, and this must be explained to society, that fire was there, fire is here, and fire will be in the future in our landscapes. This is the first point. We also mentioned that the fire behavior that we are seeing now is evolving and has been evolving along the evolution of our landscapes, and especially along how our landscape has been accumulating fuel, forest fuel, so vegetation to burn, to be able to burn. We've seen especially this evolution with the concept of fire generations. I personally mentioned that concept that I'm not going to go deep in this definition, but mainly expresses the maximum average of fire behavior for specific landscapes and the response from society, from the administration, from the emergency services. We've seen how we've changed from the first generations that mainly burn grasslands and bushlands, what we are seeing in the north part of Europe, to the fires that nowadays are burning wild urban interfaces, and the mega fires that we saw in Portugal, in Chile in 2017, and in California last year in 2018. And there are no emergency services able or prepared to deal with such behaviors. There are no emergency service prepared to respond to a fire which is burning 200,000 hectares per night with peaks of 80,000 hectares per hour. This is massive, this is huge. And apart from that, there are no tools, software tools to simulate this kind of spread patterns. There is no knowledge, but there are some experiences. We have the experience from the colleagues that were there working in California, in Chile, and Portugal, of course. And what we need are tools to organize and to share this existing knowledge, this existing experience. Of course, if there could be tools to simulate the evolution of these fires would be great, but for the time being, what we have is experiences, and we need tools to organize these experiences and to organize this knowledge and to facilitate its exchange. It was mentioned that there are some barriers, existing barriers, to facilitate this exchange of knowledge, mainly because we are more or less 31 different countries with different standards of operations, etc. It was mentioned also that we are mainly reacting instead of deploying a proactive response from Europe. And there was an important question that instead, of course, because the base problem is the fuel of our landscapes, and it was mentioned that instead of talking of forest management, we should talk on landscape management. So it's not only a question of fuel, it's a question of what we are doing in our landscape, what activities we are deploying in our landscape, what economic profits or economic activities are we doing there. In this sense, we were discussing that the emergency management, it doesn't start when the fire starts. The emergency management starts when we, as a society, decide what activities do we deploy in our landscapes. Here is when the emergency management starts, because the management starts before the emergency. It starts by managing, as I said, the landscapes. And I think that this improvising a little bit, for sure I'm forgetting some aspects, but this is more or less the main conclusions.
Thank you very much. You did a very nice job. Paco, I think I will first deal with health, because the logic will be that you conclude the conclusions. Paco, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good morning. Well, health is a complex issue, as you all know, and we have addressed this complex issue keeping the One Health perspective. And for that, we have discussed about food, about infectious diseases, and about CBRN. So as for food, our reflections went around the concept of food terrorism. That is a new concept to be added to the old concept of bioterrorism or the concept of agroterrorism. And there is another concern in our minds, in our reflections, that is how do we ensure food resilience in the context of natural disasters, the disasters that have been presented before. How do we keep our food chain, our supply of food that is vulnerable, safe, and sufficient during these events? In terms of infectious diseases, there is a lot of research from many angles. And the instruments we have in our hands in Europe, in the European Union, are rather flexible. We keep all together the One Health concept approach, always focusing on the interface between human health, animal health, environmental health, so that the benefit is maximized. And we also have some concerns about the tricky thing of the concept of vaccination versus vaccine availability. It's not the same having a vaccine there than ensuring sufficient coverage whenever vaccination is deployed. And for sure, we are firm on the idea that it's worth investing on combating and fighting diseases at source. As regards CBRN and these kind of threats, we were discussing the difference of approach between the lower impact and higher probability events as compared with high impact and low probability that keeps high in the agendas. Everybody knows about Fukushima or the chlorine attacks. That is big impact, huge impact, but low probability. But we are less aware about the complications and how to address lower impact of events that may happen with a certain level of frequency, such as how the new materials behave when they are on fire, when they are burned, and the health implications of these events. For that, for all the three types of implications that we have discussed, but especially for the last one on CBRN, we need to raise awareness, and the awareness has to be raised early enough, and preferably targeting the populations that are more susceptible or expected to behave in a preventive manner. And finally, we concluded that there is enough appetite by the end users of the research outcomes to implement these outcomes in their policies. And surprisingly, we found a kind of consensus that is more appetite in the side of the authorities, especially on law and enforcement authorities, as compared to the industry, to the business. So this is more or less the summary of what we discussed as regards health.
Thank you very much for this nice report. And we will conclude now with Tom de Groove on the last roundtable. Please, Tom.
Thank you. The last roundtable was about operational support to DRR, but we extended it a bit to operationalizing DRR. So we extended to making whatever the findings were for operational support to make them more sustainable. We had 4 interventions. We had covering the whole cycle. So there's operational support in more the prevention and risk side, even climate change by Ignacy Fontanals from the Rescue Project at city level. There was operational support at the preparation level by Evangelos Zdongos of the InPrep project. There was operational support being discussed at the response level by Spiridon Kintzios of the Toxi Triage project on CBRN. And then there was a bit all phases discussed in the project that Marcel van Berlo was presenting, the Driver Plus project, where the main argument was about a pan-European trial validation methodology to actually test existing solutions in real context. All of them discussed elements of how to bring this operational support to the right users. And some of the main conclusions were in the Driver Plus project, the key idea is to develop some centers of expertise across Europe, which may actually create business models to deliver services. So the challenge is to bring the findings to the users, so to turn science into services. And one idea that was presented was around these centers of expertise, where toolkits, handbooks, methodologies can be turned into services. The Rescue Project had led to very, very interesting discussions. This was climate change and resilience at city level, where we talked about governance, a very important element of governance, which was mentioned by other speakers here on public-private partnerships for resilience. Business models are key in this. How can you turn an idea into a business that generates money, that has an added value and creates a market? Governance was, in our session, was represented by the question, who owns resilience? Is it one department? Is it one person at the city level? Who do you turn to for resilience? Obviously, it's not so easy, and it's a systemic approach that's necessary. Resilience is part of many departments. There's many aspects to it. So in the end, it must be at the mayor level, at the politician level, where resilience is dealt with. That was one of the key recommendations from the Rescue Project, from their findings at City View. The Toxi Triage project developed a new concept for operation for mass casualties during a CBRN event, with conclusions on possible standards, new best practices for a more effective dealing with such events. How this can be operationalized, we talked about standards, we talked about handbooks with practical recommendations that could be further used afterwards. Finally, the InPrep project talked about better preparedness with 3 key conclusions: digitizing plans, digitizing preparedness plans is very important, building platforms for stakeholders to discuss, and building scenarios that can be used, that are developed very well, very thoughtful, very careful, and that can be used in a broad context. Scenarios was one of those ways that across the projects was seen as a real added value, because it brings people together on the same, with the same baseline assumptions, and then you can take conclusions from that. In general, there's three important points in this area of operational support to DRR and operationalizing it. One is knowledge management. It is very, very critical to bring these results further, to put them in a format that is useful for either policymakers, if it's about policy decisions, for economic operators, if it's about business and service opportunities, or local actors. So knowledge management in terms of handbooks, in terms of data, maybe standards, etc., is very important to push it to that level. In the context of the new legislation, the new civil protection mechanism, it is changing. There are a couple of new areas for development, so this knowledge must be brought there. The people developing this must be aware of all these good conclusions. So having them ready in the right format is always very, very important. So yes, the second point is it can be operationalized in institutional mechanisms such as the civil protection mechanism. What are the opportunities? Forest fire, CBRN are definitely on the agenda, so the best ideas can go in that area. But also at national level and at local level, obviously these links must be made. And thirdly, it's about the business, exploitation of results. How can small businesses make money with this? How can this be part of an ecosystem of an innovation ecosystem at city level, at national level, at European level. Those were the main conclusions from our session.
Thank you very much, Tom. And with this, I would like to thank you all for your great job. It has been really interesting. Thank you very much for sharing and for reporting. It will be very useful for the continuation of what we will do to reshape, in fact, the community of users, thematic groups. I would like to stress that we will be entering into discussions on what I said yesterday on governance, because we need to see what thematic, I would say, discussions need to be pursued and consolidated. We need to identify leadership also for these different groups, so that in 2020 we implement really clearly this kind of thematic discussions on the long run, and to have a very strong platform when Horizon Europe will start. So it's really what it has taken, and I really thank you very much, because all the inputs that we had from yesterday and today will feed our discussions also on Horizon Europe preparation. So thank you very much. I would like to thank you all for coming here. You know that there is a poster session which you might wish to see, and to continue to network. I would ask you to, if you are not participating in thematic group 2, to leave the place at 12:30, because the other groups is coming. If you are obviously attending the thematic group 2, you can stay here, but there is no lunch foreseen, so you will need to survive until the breakout, because there will be some sandwiches, but only after the common introduction. So I thank you very much. I wish you a safe journey back home, and we obviously keep in touch. There will be notes being taken from all these panels. Briefing material will be produced. You will get them in 6 weeks from now. Thank you very much.